Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Minash. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of real estate investing. Today is no exception. We have a great guest all the way from Oklahoma City. Welcome to the show, Austin Tunnell.
Great to be here, Victor. Thanks for having me.
Well, great to have you here. Now, Austin, you've pivoted into a new segment of the market. I'm excited to have this conversation because there's not a lot of people that are pursuing the strategy that you are. We've done it in the past. We're not doing it currently. But maybe before we do, perhaps give a little bit of your backstory and how you got to this point in your journey.
I'll give the quick version because I started off at KPMG in Houston. That was my first job. I made it a whole year and a half, got my CPA, realized that's not what I wanted to do, quit, got an unpaid internship in Panama, met a master mason, went off to the Peace Corps for 2 years trying to find myself, and really became convicted about this idea of the built environment in the U.S. And how we could make it better than what we've been doing over the past 50 years after I traveled and saw other places, and realizing that the built environment really shapes our everyday life and the human experience. And so asking the question, why don't things, we're the wealthiest country in the history of the world, why are things so ugly? Why is life so isolated? Why are neighborhoods so segregated? And I started figuring out the whys and really wanted to do something about it, but I didn't just want to do it from a spreadsheet. So I went and apprenticed for a master mason for 2 years. And that's how I ended up in Oklahoma and learned how to build these old pre-war triple wide masonry buildings. And since then, in 2015, I launched my company Building Culture in 2017. It was operating as design and build. And so we're architecture in-house, GC in-house. And we've done some small developments, but now I would consider myself like an emerging GP in terms of syndicating our own deals in different SPVs. And what I'm focused on is trying to put all the pieces together, because these infill projects are very, very difficult. You can't attract institutional money. They're too small, but you also can't get funding like you can for a single family detached house. So it's this kind of missing middle of housing, but also missing middle of capital. And I think it takes a lot of creativity and hard work to try to figure that out. But we love what we do, me and the whole team. And so that's what we're focused on now, is these 1-2 acre infill projects in Oklahoma City that are $10 to $30 million, syndicating from high net worth individuals, perhaps family offices in the future that already think a little bit longer term, a little more generationally, and then building great places that enrich the communities that we build them, while also providing really wonderful assets to hold on to long term. So we're not really IRR driven. We're looking at unlevered yield on cost. And are we building the right thing in the right place in an area that's going to grow and become more desirable over time?
If you think about the evolution of cities, and almost every city in America has experienced this, where if you go back pre-World War II, the focus was in the core of the city. And then post-World War II, the cities exploded into the suburbs. And one of the consequences of that was a band of real estate outside the downtown core, between the downtown core and the suburbs, that were largely neglected for, in some cases, 50 years. There's many urban wastelands. Maybe that exists in Oklahoma City as well.
It does.
And what's happened is there has been a rediscovery of the urban core, where all of a sudden it's become actually more desirable to live in those neighborhoods that are right in transition, right on the edge of those neighborhoods. They become quite desirable, and I see it in so many different cities. And I love what you're describing, because these communities can be very walkable, and there is a sense of community. You can go 2 blocks to the bakery or to the coffee shop, and maybe to the funky clothing store. It's all right there. Grandparents can take the grandkids for an ice cream, which you cannot do in the downtown, and you can not do probably in the suburbs either.
Absolutely. And one quick anecdote on that. I live in a walkable neighborhood right by near downtown Oklahoma City. And my parents are just moved here. My sister and her family just moved here because it's diverse housing. We all live in different price point housing, different types. My parents wanted, single story living. And there's no other neighborhood in the Oklahoma City metro that we could do this. And there's, a coffee shop and a taco shop and a brewery and a sushi restaurant and little shops. My wife gets her haircut right here, all within a walkable neighborhood. Yes, of course, we have to leave in a car. It's not about no cars. It's about a different way of everyday life that's very enriching. And then there's a demographic push. I mean, there's all kinds of statistics, the National Realtor Association, where it's like 78% of people report that they want to live in a walkable neighborhood and would be willing to pay more for it 89% of millennials, I'm a millennial, say they want to live in a walkable neighborhood, and it's like 90 something percent of Gen Zs. But it's also the boomer generation too is increasingly waking up. Do I really want to end up in an institutional nursing home one day when I can't drive, or do I want to live somewhere that I can still live everyday life around other people, multi-generational, intergenerational living? So there's so many positives, and the demographics are pushing that way. On top of smaller households. 63% of households in the US are 1 to 2 person, and it's like 77% are 1 to 3. I'm probably a couple points off there because I might be thinking Oklahoma, but they're very close. And so that typical 3-bedroom suburban house doesn't fit the demographics of today. It made more sense 50, 100 years ago after World War II, as you mentioned, but that is simply not the case today, and the market has really not caught up with this.
Correct. And if you think about the national home builders, they're not going to come anywhere close to a project like this because their goal is to get the cost per square foot down. They need a repeatable manufacturing pipeline. Like this is true assembly line construction. If you look at what they're doing with, these large planned subdivisions, they can send a framing crew from house to house to house. They never leave the street for a few months. It's just a horizontal assembly line where they move the crews. That's much more difficult to accomplish in a dense infill environment. So the economies of scale, and then of course, just getting equipment and materials in and out, the logistics are complicated. You got to negotiate road closures and all this other stuff. And then even if you can figure that out, oftentimes the parcels are too small, right? So the key, at least in our experience, is if you're going to do that, how do you get enough economy of scale within a radius? It doesn't have to be within one property, but it needs to be within a radius so that you can farm that neighborhood and create a little bit of scale, not on one block necessarily, but in the neighborhood.
I love that you said farm that neighborhood. That's exactly how we think. We're not indiscriminately building all over the Oklahoma City metro wherever we can find a lot. We were actually focused on a few of the most kind of like walkable neighborhoods and most maybe walkable districts is a better way to say it. And the most kind of like up and coming walkable districts and then providing some of the missing ingredients that are not there. And we're kind of doubling down because you see this over and over again. Supply and demand of walkability actually go together. The more supply, the more demand, because the more desirable a place gets, the more services it can support. And then also your point on the national home builders. Yeah, they're very good at what they do. They provide a service. Not only is infill and these smaller projects more difficult, just like inherently kind of more complex in a tighter radius, but you've also had 100 years of regulation and bureaucracy almost making it illegal to do this and incentivizing suburban sprawl through zoning, through fire codes, through building codes, through engineering codes and traffic. And things like that have only started shifting back the other way the past 20 years where you're even able to kind of do this, but it still takes a whole lot of brain damage to do it. So if your goal, and I tell people this, if your goal is to make the most money the fastest, don't go and try to develop this stuff. Now I think we can serve our investors because we're really good at it and we can take 1-acre projects, 2-acre projects, and that are $10 million and make them profitable and make them really good investments. But once again, you can't stroke a $50 million check for something like that. These are $10, $20 million projects. So it's just a different probably investor base that is interested in it. But I also find there's a lot of investors that are interested in it. Not only kind of this long-term hold mentality where they don't have to sell in 4 years and then trying to place money in 6 months to get a 1031 and maybe you hit your IRR, maybe you didn't, can't control the cap rate at exit, and just kind of this more patient equity. A lot of people are becoming more passionate about helping build a better built environment in the United States and kind of reviving this old architectural tradition that we've lost. And so that combo is really interesting and has been fun to kind of talk to more and more people that are interested in it.
Well, 1 and 2 acre parcels in the core of the city is not that easy to do necessarily, unless it happens to be an abandoned industrial site or maybe a strip mall or a small shopping center. Oftentimes you need to create a land assembly. Look, there's 2 ways to make money in land, right? You take large land and you carve it up, or you take land that's been carved up and you put it back together. Those are the 2 principal methods, right? And so if you have land that has been carved up into pieces that are too small, you can create a lot of value. Individually, these properties might be, worthless. But if you can pull these together, Now, all of a sudden, you can create some value. I mean, we did this on one block in Philadelphia where each property was literally worthless. And we eventually, over a 5-year period, assembled 19 lots. We assembled almost an entire city block.
Wow.
It took a while. And, the cheapest one we bought for $6,000 and the most expensive one was probably 38, but our average cost was like 12. And so we were able to put together a pretty decent business case, had to be patient, and otherwise these parcels were worthless.
That is a very good point. Urban land assemblage is very difficult. One of our projects that's 1.1 acres is 5 different parcels. And honestly, you're correct. 1 and 2 acres particularly is, I can do that in Oklahoma City because of the conditions here. The revival has happened late compared to an Austin or a Dallas or Nashville and all these other places. So you can still get those. But I would say like half an acre is kind of that minimum viable size. And yeah, maybe it can go down a little bit, but if you can get half an acre is when you can start really doing something. You might be able to put a 30 or 50 unit apartment building or townhomes or mixed use building or something like that. But still, the land assemblage is difficult. And on this project with 5 parcels, I think it took 2.5 years just to get the land and then another couple years for entitlements.
Well, so that's the other piece that's difficult to control is the entitlement process. Are you looking to change the zoning? Are you looking to get relief on density? Are you building by right and saying, okay, I'm going to get 50 units because that's what the zoning gives me, and I'm not going to go through the brain damage of trying to get more?
We are looking at municipalities where the kind of politics, and when I say politics, the politics of development is already shifting, where they're kind of pushing zoning in a new direction, at least in certain areas. It's not the whole city or municipality they're doing it, but they'll take kind of their little old Main Street, downtown center, whatever it is, and kind of create a central business district around it where you can have 0 lot lines, no height restrictions. So we want that in place because if you're having to fight zoning and you can have a whole neighborhood come out against you, that's really difficult. We don't mind fighting some variances, but we want to look for that. We want to look for places that have tip incentives. That's not a requirement, but it's really nice. But it doesn't take a bad deal and make it good, but it can take a fine deal and make it good with something like TIF. And then it's still hard, though, even if you have the zoning in place, it's still just difficult because city staff, fire marshals, engineering, all that still aren't really used to it. So what we've had to do and what we increasingly are doing is just building really good relationships with city council members, with city managers, with all the staff. We're on several boards. Several people on my team are on different boards. We're pushing for development reform. And it's actually happening. That's what's kind of interesting is I've actually, I used to think it would probably be impossible to change things. And now and granted, if you're in a really big city, it's going to be a lot harder. It's more possible than you would think by building relationships and kind of trust over time.
100%. I mean, think about the people that are in these elected positions. And you think about what is the job of city council. 95% of what they do is all land use. Now, they didn't realize that when they ran for office, right? They thought that they were going to be, I don't know, changing parking meter rates or, I don't know, pet waste bylaws. But there's only so much you can do of that kind of stuff. It's 95% land use. And look, they're school teachers, lawyers, whatever they were. None of them went to school learning land development, and that is the job. So they're real amateurs at it. And it is our job as developers to educate them, not manipulate them, but to educate them so that they really understand the economics, because every developer's calculator works about the same. Every lender's calculator works about the same. And so they understand what's possible versus what's a pipe dream. And then if that conversation is grounded in reality, now you can make some meaningful progress.
Everything you said there rings 100% true. You know, I'm 37. I'm a lot younger. You've got a lot more experience, but that's what we've kind of learned over the past 3 to 5 years is they didn't get in it for this. They don't know anything about that. And if you want to make these projects happen, you have to have relationships. And I really like that you said it's not to manipulate. People kind of sometimes think politics and power. No, these are relationships and showing them what is the outcome that we are trying to get to for our city? Okay, if we want this outcome, here are some of the things that need to change to be able to do this, to be able to attract capital, whatever it is. And we've had some really great, not everyone will change their minds.
You just need enough.
Yeah, you just need enough. You need a majority. That's it.
Exactly. Well, Austin, if folks want to connect, if they want to learn more, what's the best way?
I probably post the most on Twitter at Austin Tunnell. That's my handle. Tunnell with two N's, two L's, like tunnel with an extra L. On LinkedIn, our website is buildingculture.com, which I'm rebuilding right now. So those are, and we've got an investor list that you could find on X or LinkedIn.
Love it. Well, Austin, great to connect. And for the listeners at home, you definitely want to connect with Austin. The links will be in the show notes. And in the meantime, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow.